Athletes called it Extreme Training Regimen and set new records. The shimmering heat waves rose from the desert floor as Naomi Cruz stared at the horizon. The year was 2047, and the world had survived the global climate unification. Barely. Technology had stabilized after decades of rapid advancement, but that didn't mean humanity had stopped pushing boundaries. Sometimes, Naomi thought, they pushed too far. "You're limping again," Julian Tai said, his lean frame casting a long shadow beside her. He was both her training partner and the team's unofficial physicist, a rare combination that made him invaluable in their sport. "It's nothing," Naomi replied, massaging her right knee. The injury from last year's World Championship had never fully healed, despite the advanced regenerative therapies. At 32, she was considered past her prime in long jump competition, a fact the sports commentators never failed to mention. The desert training facility sprawled before them, a massive complex built in what was once the most inhospitable part of the Sahara. Now transformed by climate engineering into a habitable zone, it housed the International Athletics Alliance, where elite athletes trained year-round. "Have you heard about the gravitational experiment?" Julian asked, checking his wrist display. "The International Coalition of Scientists is testing some kind of extraplanetary gravitational energy harvesting today." Naomi shrugged. Another day, another experiment that could potentially end the world. Julian laughed. "They claim it's perfectly safe, small scale, controlled environment, minimal risk." "That's what they always say," Naomi replied, stretching her hamstring carefully. "Let's focus on what we can control. I need to add at least 20 centimeters to my jump if I want to qualify for next month's Pan Global." The sky above them was clear, a perfect azure unmarred by clouds. No one noticed when a faint shimmer, like heat distortion, rippled across the horizon. No one felt the subtle shift in the air molecules as they rearranged themselves to a new physical paradigm. No one, that is, until gravity reversed. It began slowly. Inside the main training hall, water bottles lifted imperceptibly from tables. Dust motes hung suspended in air longer than they should have. Naomi, practicing her approach on the indoor track, felt unusually light on her feet, so light that her final bound launched her nearly a meter higher than normal. She crashed down awkwardly, her knee twisting. But strangely, the impact hurt less than it should have. "What the hell was that?" her coach Marta called from the sidelines, her tablet forgotten in her hands. Before Naomi could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red emergency lights pulsed along the corridors. The facility's AI voice, calm and measured, announced, "Attention all personnel. A gravitational anomaly has been detected. Please secure all equipment and proceed to designated safety zones. This is not a drill." Julian burst through the doors, his face flushed with excitement and fear. "It's the experiment. Something went wrong with the gravitational field harmonizers. They're saying it's affected several areas around the globe, including our entire complex." "What exactly does that mean?" Naomi asked, feeling a strange lightness in her stomach. As if in answer, a medicine ball rolled off a nearby rack, hesitated, and then slowly began to rise toward the ceiling. "It means," Julian said, watching the ball with scientific fascination, "that we're experiencing localized gravitational reversal. Essentially, down is becoming up." Coach Marta grabbed Naomi's arm. "We need to evacuate now. They're shutting down the facility until they can stabilize the field." But Naomi stood transfixed, watching as more objects began to float upward, towels, water bottles, and eventually, the lighter equipment. A strange idea was forming in her mind as she watched a javelin drift upward in slow motion. "How long will it last?" she asked Julian. He shook his head. "The scientists are saying about a week before their fail-safes can reset the field harmonizers. But it's dangerous. Naomi, the reversal isn't complete yet. It's fluctuating. By tomorrow, they say gravity here could be fully reversed. pulling everything toward the ceiling instead of the floor. A smile slowly spread across Naomi's face as she watched the floating javelin. "A week," she repeated. "A week of reversed gravity." Marta recognized that look. "No, absolutely not. Whatever you're thinking, stop it right now." "Think about it," Naomi said, her eyes shining with possibility. "What if this isn't a disaster? What if it's an opportunity?" Julian caught on immediately. "You want to train in reversed gravity? That's insane," Marta cut in. "It's dangerous and completely unauthorized." "It's brilliant," Naomi countered. "Our bodies adapting to reversed gravitational pull. Imagine what that could do for muscle memory, for technique adaptation. When normal gravity returns, we'll have insights no other athletes have ever had." "The facility is being evacuated," Marta argued. "They're shutting everything down." Naomi looked around the massive training hall at the world-class equipment that was about to be abandoned for a week. "So they'll turn off the lights and lock the doors. But they can't turn off the gravitational anomaly. It'll still be here, waiting." Julian's scientific mind was already racing with the possibilities. The physiological adaptations alone would be fascinating to document. The rapid redistribution of bodily fluids, the adjustment of the vestibular system. "You're both out of your minds," Marta said, but there was a hesitation in her voice. Outside the training hall, they could hear the sounds of evacuation, vehicles starting, people shouting orders, equipment being secured. "I'm staying," Naomi decided, with or without official approval. "This is the kind of chance that comes once in a lifetime." Julian nodded. "I'm with you. The data we could collect would be unprecedented." Marta looked between her two protégés, then at the medicine ball now gently bouncing against the ceiling. She sighed deeply. "If you're staying, you'll need supervision and someone to pull you down when you float too high." Naomi grinned. "Is that a yes?" "It's a, you're going to do this regardless, so I might as well try to keep you alive," Marta clarified. "But we're not the only ones who'll see the potential here. If we're doing this, we need to move fast." As the facility emptied around them, Naomi, Julian, and Marta gathered supplies and equipment, hiding them in the underground recovery room, the one place they reasoned would be most stable during the gravitational shift. By nightfall, they had established their secret training base, and they weren't alone. A handful of other athletes had refused evacuation. Anna Patel, a gymnast from India, Marcus Okafor, a Nigerian high jumper, and Keiko Tanaka, a Japanese sprinter. Together, they formed an impromptu coalition of rebels, united by a single belief, that within this chaos lay the seeds of unprecedented human achievement. As they gathered in the dim emergency lighting of the recovery room, Naomi addressed the small group. "What we're doing isn't just about breaking records. It's about proving that humanity can adapt to anything, even when the world turns upside down." Little did they know just how literal that statement would become, or how their week of defiance would change the future of human athletic performance forever. By dawn of the second day, the gravitational reversal had intensified. What had begun as a slight reduction in downward pull had transformed into a distinct upward tug. Objects left unsecured drifted ceilingward, gathering in floating clusters against the high roofs of the training facilities. Naomi woke to the disorienting sensation of her body pressing against the restraints they had fashioned from training straps the night before. Without them, she would have floated away from her sleeping mat. "Morning, Gravity Defier," Julian called from across the room, where he was already taking measurements with a makeshift pendulum that swung upward instead of down. "We're at approximately negative 0.7 G now. By this afternoon, we should hit full reversal." Naomi carefully unstrapped herself, immediately feeling the pull toward the ceiling. It took concentrated effort to stay grounded, requiring her to grab onto secured equipment and essentially climb downward. "How did everyone sleep?" she asked the small group as they gathered for a breakfast of protein concentrates and hydration supplements. Like I was falling upward in a nightmare, Marcus replied, his tall frame making him particularly vulnerable to the reversed pull. But I'm adjusting. Keiko nodded. My inner ear is still confused, but it's fascinating how quickly the body begins to adapt. I've been documenting the changes. Coach Marta entered from the corridor, where she'd been scouting the rest of the facility. The main gymnasium has the strongest reversal effect. Everything not bolted down is on the ceiling now, but the outdoor track is interesting. It has variable zones. Some areas are almost normal, while others have strong upward pull. Perfect for graduated training, Naomi said. We can start in the milder areas and work our way up to full reversal. Anna, who had been quiet, finally spoke. I've been thinking about techniques. In gymnastics, we're always fighting or using gravity. Now we need to invert everything. Landings become launches, falls become ascents. Inverse kinetics, Julian agreed. We need to rethink every movement. Our muscle memory works against us here. They spent the morning cautiously exploring the transformed facility, mapping out the varying intensities of gravitational reversal and securing pathways using climbing ropes and carabiners. The once familiar training complex had become an alien landscape where the ceiling was now the floor, and every movement required careful calculation. By midday, they had established their first training protocols. Keiko, the sprinter, discovered that running required an entirely new technique, more like controlled falling forward while preventing upward drift. Marcus found that his high jump approach needed to be inverted, jumping downward from an elevated platform toward the ground, fighting against the upward pull. For Naomi, the long jump presented unique challenges and opportunities. Her run-up needed to be tethered, preventing her from floating away, but the jump itself could harness the upward pull for unprecedented distance. Try thinking of it as a downward dive followed by an upward glide, Julian suggested as they set up a modified long jump pit in the main gymnasium. They had secured a landing mat to the actual floor, while Naomi would jump from what was originally the ceiling, now functioning as their ground. The timing will be completely different, Marta warned. Don't expect to get it right immediately. Naomi nodded, securing the tether around her waist. She stood on the improvised platform they'd attached to the ceiling, looking down at the distant floor where the landing mat waited. Ready when you are, Julian called, recording the attempt on his tablet. Taking a deep breath, Naomi began her approach, fighting against the strange sensation of running upside down. Her footfalls felt light, almost inconsequential, and maintaining direction was a struggle. When she reached the takeoff point, she drove her leg downward, or what felt like downward in this reversed world, and launched herself toward the floor. The sensation was extraordinary. Instead of fighting gravity during the descent phase of her jump, the reversed pull extended her hang time dramatically. She seemed to float across the inverted space, covering a distance that would have been impossible under normal conditions. Her landing, however, was less successful. Unprepared for the final interaction with the floor, she tumbled awkwardly onto the mat, the tether tangling around her legs. That was incredible, Anna exclaimed from her observation point. You must have covered at least 12 meters. Julian checked his measurements. 11.8 meters, nearly 2.5 meters beyond the current world record. But under conditions that would never be recognized officially, Marta reminded them. And with a landing that would have disqualified you anyway. Naomi untangled herself from the tether, her mind racing with possibilities. The landing needs work, but do you realize what this means? We're discovering techniques that no one has ever tried before. When normal gravity returns, some of these principles could still apply. Like what? Marcus asked, intrigued. The body position during flight, for one, Naomi explained. I felt a completely different engagement of my core muscles to stabilize, and the arm movement had a much greater effect on trajectory. Julian was already documenting everything, his scientific training taking over. We need to formalize these observations, create a systematic approach to what we're calling reverse gravity training, Keiko suggested. Anti-gravity conditioning, offered Anna. Extreme training regimen, said Naomi with a smile. ETR for short. Because that's what this is, training pushed to the extreme. The name stuck, and over the next 24 hours, they refined their approaches, developing specific ETR techniques for each of their specialties. Keiko pioneered what she called reversed propulsion mechanics for sprinting. Marcus developed negative space displacement for his high jump. Anna created an entirely new catalog of gymnastic moves that utilized the ceiling as a launch point. Naomi focused on perfecting what she termed inverse momentum conservation, a technique that harnessed the upward pull during the approach to maximize horizontal distance during the jump. By the third day, word had somehow leaked to the outside world. Their communications were supposed to be restricted, but someone, they suspected Marcus, who had a journalist girlfriend, had shared videos of their training sessions. Coach Marta burst into the gymnasium during their morning session, her face pale. "We've got a problem. The videos are everywhere. They're calling you gravity hackers and physics defiers. The International Athletics Commission has issued a statement condemning unauthorized training in the affected zones." Naomi paused in her stretching, which now involved being harnessed to the floor to prevent drifting upward. "Did they explicitly order us to stop?" "Not yet," Marta admitted, "but they're sending inspectors to all affected facilities to ensure compliance with evacuation orders. They'll be here by tomorrow." The group exchanged looks of concern. "We haven't broken any specific rules," Julian argued. "Unusual training environments aren't prohibited. But trespassing in an evacuated facility might be," Anna pointed out. Keiko, who had been monitoring outside communications on her portable device, looked up. "There's more. Other athletes have seen what we're doing. Some are calling for similar opportunities. Others are claiming we'll have an unfair advantage when competition resumes. The sportscasting networks are running special features," Marcus added. "They're calling it the gravity revolution. Public opinion seems split. Some think we're innovators. Others think we're reckless." Naomi sat back, feeling the upward pull on her body as a constant reminder of their unique situation. "So what do we do? Abandon everything we've learned? Pack up and leave?" There was a moment of silence as each considered the implications. They had all made remarkable progress in just 3 days. Their bodies were adapting to the reversed gravitational field in ways they hadn't thought possible, developing new neural pathways and muscle memories that could transform their performances. "I say we continue," Julian finally said, "but we need to be strategic. Make this about science and innovation, not about breaking rules." "I agree," Keiko said. "We document everything meticulously, present it as research, not rebellion. And we invite others," Naomi suggested, a bold idea forming. "If the authorities are coming anyway, let's make this an open experiment. Anyone who wants to learn can join us." Marta looked skeptical. "You want to turn our rogue training session into an official event?" "Not official," Naomi clarified. "Alternative. We're creating the first extreme training regimen symposium. We share what we've learned, document the results, and build a case for the legitimate application of these techniques when normal gravity returns." The idea caught fire among the group. By that afternoon, they had sent out encrypted invitations to select athletes they trusted, competitors who valued innovation over tradition, who might appreciate the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to train in reversed gravity. To their surprise, the response was overwhelming. Despite the warnings and official condemnation, nearly 30 additional athletes arranged transport to the facility, arriving in secret through the night. The gravitational anomaly had created zones of isolation around the affected areas, with restricted airspace and ground access. But determined athletes found ways through, some legally with research credentials, others through less official channels. By dawn of the 4th day, the underground recovery room had transformed into a command center for what they now openly called the ETR Initiative. Athletes from 12 countries, representing 8 different disciplines, gathered to learn the techniques Naomi and her original group had pioneered. The mood was electric, a combination of scientific curiosity, athletic ambition, and the thrill of participating in something revolutionary. They organized into discipline-specific groups, each led by one of the original members. Julian coordinated the scientific documentation, ensuring that every discovery was properly recorded for future analysis. They were so engrossed in their expanded training program that they almost missed the arrival of the inspection team. The facility's perimeter sensors alerted them just 30 minutes before the official delegation reached the main entrance. "They're here," Marta announced to the gathered athletes. "Government officials, IAC representatives, and scientific observers, at least 15 people." A tense silence fell over the group. They had known this confrontation was coming, but now faced a crucial decision: hide their activities or stand openly behind what they had created. Naomi looked around at the determined faces of her fellow athletes, people who had risked careers and reputations to be part of this experiment. She made her decision. "Let them in," she said firmly. "But we don't stop training. Let them see exactly what we're doing and why it matters." As the inspection team entered the main gymnasium, they were greeted by the extraordinary sight of elite athletes training in fully reversed gravity. Runners sprinted across the ceiling. Gymnasts performed impossible aerial maneuvers without returning to the ground, and jumpers floated through space in graceful arcs that defied conventional physics. The lead inspector, a stern-faced woman from the International Athletic Commission named Director Eliza Way, watched in astonishment before regaining her composure. "This facility was ordered evacuated. You are all in violation of safety protocols." Naomi stepped forward, or rather, pulled herself downward using one of the secured ropes. "We're aware of the evacuation order. Director Way, we chose to remain for scientific and athletic purposes." "This is dangerous and unauthorized," Way countered. "The gravitational reversal is unstable. Scientists cannot guarantee your safety." Julian joined Naomi, his tablet filled with their meticulous documentation. "Actually, we've been monitoring the field stability. It's maintaining consistent parameters within each zone. We've mapped the entire facility and established safety protocols for each variable area." A scientist from the inspection team approached, his interest clearly piqued despite the official stance. "You've been documenting the physiological effects?" "Extensively," Julian confirmed, "including adaptation rates, modified technique development, and projected applications in normal gravitational conditions." Director Way was unmoved. "Regardless of your documentation, this remains an unauthorized use of a restricted zone. I have the authority to remove all of you immediately." "Before you do," Naomi said, "I'd like to show you something." She nodded to Keiko, who activated the large display screen they had mounted on what was now the floor. It showed a compilation of their achievements over the past 4 days, new techniques being developed, bodies adapting to impossible conditions, and most importantly, the collaborative spirit that had emerged among athletes who are typically fierce competitors. "What you're seeing isn't just athletes breaking rules," Naomi explained. "It's human adaptability at work. We're learning things about physical performance that could never be discovered under normal conditions. And we're documenting everything according to scientific standards," Julian added. "This isn't reckless experimentation, it's structured research with athletic applications." The scientists in the inspection team were clearly fascinated, whispering among themselves as they watched the footage. Even some of the athletic officials seemed impressed despite their formal disapproval. "The gravitational reversal ends in 3 days," Naomi continued. "We're asking for those 3 days to complete our research before the opportunity is gone forever." Director Way's expression remained stern, but she glanced at her team, noting their interest. "And what do you propose to do with this research once the field normalizes?" "Share it," Naomi said simply. "Openly and completely. Every technique, every measurement, every insight. No patents, no proprietary methods. This belongs to all athletes." There was a moment of tense silence as Wei considered. Finally, she spoke. I will allow observation for 24 hours. During that time, my team will assess the safety and scientific merit of your activities. If at any point I determine there is undue risk, evacuation will be immediate and non-negotiable. It wasn't everything they had asked for, but it was something. We accept your terms, Naomi agreed. As the inspection team dispersed to observe different training groups, Marta pulled Naomi aside. They'll never give us the full 3 days. Wei is looking for any excuse to shut us down. Then we accelerate. Naomi decided. We've been building toward a culmination anyway, a demonstration of everything we've learned. Let's make it happen tomorrow instead of day 7. A competition? Marta asked. An exhibition, Naomi corrected. The first and possibly only reversed gravity games. We show them exactly what human potential looks like when freed from conventional constraints. The plan spread quickly among the athletes, who worked through the night to prepare for their unprecedented exhibition. Each discipline designed a demonstration that would showcase the unique adaptations they had developed. The inspection team watched with growing interest as the preparations unfolded, their scientific curiosity clearly overriding their official caution. By morning of the 5th day, the main gymnasium had been transformed into a multidisciplinary arena. The inspection period was set to end at noon, giving them a narrow window for their demonstration. Athletes gathered in their reversal-adapted uniforms, specially modified to account for the inverted pull on fabrics and equipment. Media feeds, which had been restricted but not entirely blocked, were quietly activated by supportive technicians. What had begun as a rogue training experiment was about to become a global spectacle. Director Wei arrived with her team, her expression making it clear that she expected to begin evacuation procedures immediately after her inspection concluded. You have until noon, she reminded them curtly. Naomi nodded. We'll be ready. The exhibition began with Keiko's sprinting demonstration, showing how the reversed gravity allowed for a completely reimagined running technique that maximized horizontal momentum while managing vertical drift. Her 100-meter sprint, measured along the ceiling, utilized what she called negative propulsion, pushing against the upward pull to generate forward momentum. Next came Marcus and the high jumpers, who had perfected a technique they called inverted approach, beginning from an elevated platform and driving downward against the reverse pull before executing a backward rotation that sent them flying toward the floor in a controlled arc. The heights they achieved, or rather, the depths they reached, exceeded normal records by nearly 30%. The gymnasts, led by Anna, performed a routine that incorporated both ceiling and floor as active surfaces, creating 3-dimensional movements that would have been impossible under normal conditions. They called it omnidirectional kinesthetics, and even the most stoic officials watched in undisguised awe. Throughout each demonstration, Julian provided scientific context, explaining how the techniques were being documented and analyzed for potential applications in normal gravity. The inspection team's scientists were fully engaged now, asking questions and taking their own measurements. Even Director Wei's rigid disapproval had softened to reluctant interest. The physiological adaptations are remarkable, she admitted during a brief intermission, though I maintain that the safety risks outweigh the benefits. We've had 0 injuries, Marta pointed out. Compare that to a normal training week. Because you've been cautious and limited in scope, Wei countered. Expanding this approach would inevitably lead to accidents. Naomi, who had been preparing for her own demonstration, joined the conversation. Or it would lead to a complete reimagining of human physical potential. Isn't that worth some calculated risk? Wei didn't answer directly. Your exhibition ends at noon, as agreed. As the final demonstration approached, Naomi took her position on the ceiling-mounted long jump platform. They had spent 5 days perfecting what she now called counter-gravitational momentum transfer, a technique that used the reversed pull to extend the flight phase of the jump while maintaining horizontal velocity. Julian gave her a thumbs up from his monitoring station, where he had sensors tracking every aspect of her biomechanics. Marta stood ready near the landing area, though landing was perhaps the wrong term in this inverted environment. The gymnasium fell silent as Naomi prepared for her approach. The inspection team, the other athletes, even the surreptitiously connected media feeds, all focused on this culminating demonstration of what human beings could achieve when physical constants were suddenly rewritten. Naomi took a deep breath, feeling the strange lightness in her body that she had now grown accustomed to. Her injured knee, remarkably, had given her almost no trouble in the reversed gravitational field. The reduced compression had allowed for recovery that months of therapy hadn't accomplished. She began her approach, each step carefully calculated to build momentum while fighting the upward pull. The technique they had developed utilized counterintuitive body positions, leaning forward far more than would be possible in normal gravity, driving each step downward to maintain contact with the ceiling-turned floor. As she hit the takeoff point, Naomi executed the maneuver they had perfected, a powerful downward drive with her lead leg, combined with an upper body position that initiated a controlled rotation. The reversed gravity caught her at the perfect moment, and she felt herself launch into what they had come to call sustained flight phase. The sensation was unlike anything in conventional athletics, a perfect balance point between horizontal momentum and vertical resistance, creating a trajectory that seemed to defy physics itself. She soared across the inverted space, her body position minutely adjusted to maximize distance. The landing technique was the most challenging aspect, requiring her to transition from horizontal flight to vertical descent against the upward pull. They had named it counterflow absorption, and it had taken days to perfect. Naomi executed it flawlessly, touching down on the floor-mounted landing mat with perfect form. The digital measurement flashed on the display, 12.44 meters. A distance that exceeded the current women's long jump world record by over 2.5 meters. The gymnasium erupted in cheers from the assembled athletes. Even some of the inspection team members were applauding despite themselves. Julian rushed to her with his tablet, showing the perfect biomechanical execution captured by their sensors. That was... Director Wei seemed at a loss for words as she approached. Unprecedented. That's the point, Naomi said, still catching her breath. This is what happens when we embrace anomalies instead of just evacuating from them. Before Wei could respond, the facility's AI system interrupted with an urgent announcement. Attention! Gravitational field fluctuation detected. Instability increasing in sectors 3 through 7. All personnel advised to secure equipment and prepare for potential field normalization. Julian checked his instruments. The reversal is weakening ahead of schedule. We might be returning to normal gravity sooner than expected. Director Wei immediately took command. This exhibition is over. Everyone needs to secure themselves immediately. When gravity normalizes, anything not properly secured will fall. The orderly exhibition transformed into controlled chaos as athletes and officials rushed to secure equipment and themselves. Items that had been adapted for ceiling mounting now posed hazards if gravity suddenly returned to normal. In the midst of the activity, Naomi noticed the media feeds were still active, broadcasting their situation to the outside world. What had begun as a rebellious training experiment had become a globally witnessed event, perhaps the most watched athletic demonstration in recent history. We need to make a statement before they cut the feeds, she told Julian urgently. This can't just end as an evacuation. He nodded, understanding immediately. They made their way to the main camera position, where Naomi addressed not just those present, but the millions now watching worldwide. What you've witnessed today isn't just about breaking records in artificial conditions, she began, her voice steady despite the commotion around her. It's about proving that human potential isn't fixed. It adapts and evolves when faced with new challenges. When gravity itself turned against us, we didn't just survive, we thrived. The AI system interrupted again. Gravitational reversal decreasing to -0.5 g and falling. Field normalization accelerating. Naomi continued quickly. The techniques we've developed here won't disappear when gravity returns to normal. They've created new neural pathways, new understandings of movement and momentum that will transform athletics forever. This isn't the end of extreme training regimen. It's just the beginning. As if to punctuate her statement, the first objects began to fall from the ceiling as the gravitational pull weakened further. Director Wei was shouting evacuation orders, and security personnel were moving to cut the media feeds. Remember what you saw here, Naomi concluded. Remember that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs happen when the world turns upside down. The feeds cut out as the evacuation accelerated. Within an hour, the facility was secured, and all personnel had been moved to safe zones outside the affected area. The athletes watched from a distance as objects continued to fall inside the complex, visible through the massive windows as gravity gradually normalized. Their week of reversed gravity had been cut short, but the impact would be far longer lasting than any of them had anticipated. In the days that followed, the global response to what became known as the Gravity Games was unprecedented. Athletic governing bodies issued emergency sessions to determine how to categorize the records set during the reversal. Scientists pored over the data that Julian and his team had meticulously collected. Medical experts debated the long-term physiological effects of training in altered gravitational fields. Most importantly, athletes worldwide began incorporating elements of the techniques developed during those 5 extraordinary days. While they couldn't replicate the reversed gravity, the principles of movement, the new understanding of momentum conservation, and the innovative approaches to traditional disciplines sparked a renaissance in athletic training. Naomi found herself at the center of a storm of controversy and acclaim. Half the sporting world hailed her as a visionary who had pushed the boundaries of human potential. The other half criticized her for reckless endangerment and circumvention of established protocols. 2 weeks after the gravitational field had fully normalized, the International Athletics Commission called for a special hearing. Naomi, Julian, and the other original participants were summoned to present their findings and face potential sanctions for their unauthorized activities. The hearing was held in Geneva, with representatives from sporting bodies, scientific institutions, and governmental agencies in attendance. The atmosphere was tense as Director Wei presented the official position that while scientifically interesting, the extreme training regimen had violated numerous safety protocols and established an unacceptable precedent for unsanctioned experimentation. When it was Naomi's turn to speak, she approached the podium with confidence despite the hostile environment. Behind her sat the athletes who had joined the experiment, now bonded by their shared experience in ways that transcended national teams and individual competitions. The official record shows that we violated an evacuation order. Naomi began. I won't dispute that fact, but I will challenge the premise that safety was our primary obligation in that moment. As athletes, our calling has always been to explore the outer limits of human capability. Throughout history, every significant advance in sport has come from someone willing to attempt what others considered impossible or inadvisable. She activated a holographic display showing the data they had collected. What we discovered during those 5 days wasn't just how to perform in reversed gravity. We gained insights into human biomechanics that simply couldn't have been obtained any other way. The negative resistance adaptation techniques we developed have already shown applications for injury recovery under normal conditions. As if to demonstrate this point, Naomi moved around the podium with fluid grace, her previously injured knee showing no sign of weakness. My chronic injury improved more in 5 days of reversed gravity training than in 6 months of conventional therapy. We're already seeing similar results in other athletes who participated. Julian stepped forward to present the scientific data, his expertise lending credibility to their position. The neural adaptations we documented have implications far beyond athletics, he explained. The human brain's ability to rapidly rewire movement patterns in response to fundamental physical changes could inform treatments for neurological conditions and rehabilitation protocols. The commission members listened with growing interest as Julian detailed the findings. The strict formality of the hearing gradually softened as scientific curiosity began to override institutional rigidity. Finally, a senior member of the commission asked the question that would determine their fate. If you had the opportunity to repeat this experiment under controlled, sanctioned conditions, what would you do differently? It was the opening Naomi had hoped for. We would expand the documentation, include more diverse athletic disciplines, and implement the safety protocols we developed during our experience rather than starting from scratch. But the fundamental approach would remain the same. Use the altered conditions not just to survive, but to thrive and discover. After hours of testimony and deliberation, the commission reached its decision. To Naomi's surprise, instead of sanctions, they announced the formation of a new division, the Adaptive Training Research Initiative. Julian was appointed as its scientific director, with Naomi serving as athletic coordinator. The commission recognizes that while protocols were violated, the knowledge gained represents a significant advancement for athletic science, the chairperson announced. Rather than punish innovation, we choose to channel it within an approved framework. The decision was a victory beyond what any of them had dared to hope for, official recognition that what they had discovered was too valuable to dismiss on procedural grounds. In the months that followed, Naomi and her team worked to formalize the techniques they had developed. The term extreme training regimen entered the sporting lexicon, and elements of their discoveries were incorporated into training programs worldwide. The scientists who had inadvertently caused the gravitational reversal were eventually able to replicate controlled versions of the effect in specialized facilities, creating training environments with variable gravity that allowed for safe implementation of ETR principles without the risks of their original accidental experiment. 1 year after the Gravity Games, Naomi stood at the starting line of the long jump competition at the Global Championships. Her recovery and training had been meticulous, incorporating both conventional techniques and the adapted ETR methods they had developed for normal gravity conditions. As she prepared for her first competitive jump since the reversal incident, she caught sight of Julian and Marta in the coaches' area, both giving her encouraging nods. In the stands sat many of the athletes who had joined them during those extraordinary 5 days, now colleagues in the ongoing research initiative. Naomi took a deep breath, feeling the familiar pull of normal gravity, heavier than the reversed conditions they had adapted to, but now imbued with new possibilities. The techniques they had developed couldn't be directly transferred, but the principles of momentum conservation, the enhanced body awareness, and the neural adaptations remained. Her approach was textbook perfection, the conventional run-up now informed by the counter-resistance rhythm they had discovered in reversed conditions. At the takeoff board, she executed what they now called the dual-plane momentum shift, a technique impossible to conceptualize before their experience with gravitational reversal. Her flight phase incorporated elements of the sustained extension they had developed, adapted for the downward pull of normal gravity. The result was a jump that seemed to defy the conventional limits of the discipline. When she landed and the measurement flashed on the board, 895 meters, a new world record, the stadium erupted. But more significant than the record itself was what it represented. Proof that the boundaries of human performance were far more flexible than anyone had imagined. In her victory interview, surrounded by media from around the world, Naomi was asked if she considered the Gravity Games to be the defining moment of her career. She smiled, remembering those extraordinary days when the world had turned upside down. "It wasn't about the reversal itself," she replied. "It was about what happens when we stop seeing obstacles as things to avoid and start seeing them as opportunities to evolve. In a world where even gravity can change overnight, the only limit that truly matters is our willingness to adapt." The story of the Gravity Games and the birth of Extreme Training Regimen became a watershed moment in athletic history, not just for the records broken or the techniques developed, but for fundamentally changing how humanity viewed the relationship between physical laws and human potential. 5 years later, Specialized training facilities around the world offered variable gravity environments as standard features for elite athletes. What had begun as an accident, embraced by a handful of rebels who refused evacuation, had evolved into an established scientific discipline with applications far beyond sport. Naomi, now retired from competition and heading the global ETAR initiative, often visited schools and universities to share the lessons of those extraordinary days. Her message remained consistent. When the world turns upside down, you have two choices. Grab onto something stable and wait for normalcy to return, or learn to walk on the ceiling. Progress always comes from those who choose the latter. In a specially designed training center in what had once been the Sahara facility, a new generation of athletes now practiced under the guidance of coaches who understood that physical laws were not so much limitations as they were contexts to be understood and harnessed. Above the main entrance, a simple quote from Naomi Cruz was displayed. "In a weightless world, will's the strongest gravitational force." And as humanity pushed further into space exploration, establishing the first permanent lunar and Martian colonies, the principles developed during that accidental week of reversed gravity found new applications in environments where variable gravitational fields were not anomalies but daily realities. What had begun as a disaster, an evacuation order disobeyed, had become the foundation for a new understanding of human adaptability, proof that even when the most fundamental force in our universe changes, humanity doesn't just survive, it thrives.